Morning everyone, thanks for tuning in again. This is going to be the third in my first series of Spectrum videos. I've previously looked at Rose and Fougère, but today I'm going to focus on leather. And leather's another category of perfumes that I'm often asked about. A lot of people love leather in their perfumes, and I try and give some recommendations here and there when asked, but I thought today I would talk about leathers running from quite soft, suede-like leathers all the way through to very dark, commanding leathers. And I feel like to start the spectrum, on the far left-hand side here, I have Cuidench by Hermès as part of their Hermès line. This is a beautiful leather, and it's one that I always like to use as a starting point when introducing people to leathers. Hermès obviously have a rich history of being celliers, so they used to produce leather goods, bridles and saddles and things for equestrian events, and that's part of their house heritage. So excluding their colognes, most of their perfumes contain a leather note, and Cuidench for me just epitomizes that sort of feeling of napped suede. This one, obviously means angel leather, and it really does feel half earthbound and half ethereal. I guess the ethereal comes from its top notes of violet, iris, there's heliotrope, daffodil, and it kind of plays over a base which is more grounding of leather, obviously, and musks. I think if you want a leather that's sophisticated and beautiful, but also effortless, one that can be worn winter, summer, day or night, Cuidench is definitely a fabulous, fabulous fragrance and a great starting point in the spectrum. Number 2 coming up now is Mahon Leather by Floris of London. This has remained one of my favourite leather fragrances for several years, and I actually started wearing it when it was first launched in 2011. It's become very difficult to get your hands on these days, but if you're searching for a leather which dances between slightly bitter and quite sweet, Mahon Leather is one of the greats. It was first inspired by the island of Majorca, and it kind of trains its focus on wonderful notes including jasmine, iris, saffron, vetiver, there's opoponax, musk, patchouli, amber, all those great kind of notes, and leather of course. This one to me smells like the interior of a beautiful Italian handbag or a pair of Italian shoes. It's meticulously made and seamless. It's a great one for day or night, or even ladies and gents. These are genderless leathers that I'm exploring, and I love them all. Floris of London never disappoint with their perfumes, and I feel Mahon Leather is probably one of the best they've ever created. Number 3, I have the sensational Cuir de Russie by Chanel. Now, Chanel's Cuir de Russie came out in the 1920s, around 1924, and it was a period after World War I where people began, I guess, taking holidays again. They were experiencing the great outdoors. And in early marketing, it was actually marketed as an outdoors sports scent. Oddly, it doesn't really have the same profile as modern sports scents, which tend to be ozonic or aquatic in nature. But this one really is a beauty. It trained its focus on Russian leather, which is quite a bittersweet kind of leather. It was exemplified by birch oil that was rubbed into the boots of the Russian soldiers during the revolution. And it has a very tart, tangy sort of quality. Cuir de Russie sort of introduces that quality here, but it also is supported by aldehydes, which we expect of Chanel. There's tobacco, ylang ylang, rose, vanilla, musk, and yeah, it's an absolute beauty. It is still produced these days in eau de parfum and pure parfum form. Obviously the vintage is beautiful, but the modern versions are great too. We've got it sitting smack bang close to the middle of the sliding scale in the leather spectrum, and that's because it's starting to push towards that slightly bitter variety, which we're going to explore further. Next up, we have the amazing Kinesia, the Knize Ten. The Knize Ten was produced by Vincent Roubert and Francois Coty in around 1920. And look, as a leather goes, until I'd experienced a few more, this was my leather endpoint. I didn't believe that there could be any leather that was stronger than this or had more presence than this. And I still maintain the fact that this is an incredibly bold, commanding leather. It is a genderless leather, despite being marketed towards men generally, but it's one that really is curious. It's got so many complex notes, rose and carnation and apoponax, musk, patchouli, you name it. It is a heavy hitter. And it was much loved by Marlene Dietrich, by James Dean. There have been so many people in Hollywood over the decades who have adored this scent, and I can understand why. It kind of sits in that tobacco blonde, habanita kind of register as far as leathers are concerned. Very powerful, very opulent and dramatic. This one really comes alive in the winter months. Next on the spectrum, we head into Guerlain territory at number 5. We've got Guerlain's Cuir de Russie. Guerlain's Cuir de Russie is one of those unicorns, and it's a scent which until probably 10 or so years ago, a lot of people hadn't heard of. It was first created in 1872 by Aimé Guerlain and was later reformulated and reissued around 1930 by Jacques Guerlain. It is indeed probably my favorite leather. This one has a spectacular chypre kind of feeling, and I've often compared it to if you took a bottle of vintage Mitsuko Parfum and you dosed it with a bunch of birch. It's just smoky and coal choked and like charred woods. It's beautiful, but it has wonderful supportive accords as well. Yeah, you really can't go wrong with a leather like this. It's so persistent, and particularly in the warm months, its projection is just titanic. I adore it in every regard. If you want to examine the notes of this, it's actually quite difficult because there really wasn't a lot of literature released around its notes or its pyramid. But for me, I do get a sense of resins in here, styrax and benzoin, apoponax, patchouli, these kind of notes, but there's also jasmine and rose and wonderful floral supporting accords. It is a unicorn, and it's going to be difficult to find at a reasonable price. This steel buoyed flacon was created in the 20s or 30s, and it's actually a product for hair. But as you can see, over time, the pure parfum element and the carrier oil have separated, so it actually makes it easy to extract the parfum from the top of the bottle. These steel buoyed flacons come up from time to time on eBay in different Guerlain perfumes, and it's probably going to be the cheapest way you can get your hands on pure parfum of the vintage variety, so check them out. Anyway, this remains very close to the apex of leather perfumes in the spectrum. But next we go on to our final one, and that's at number 6. It is Santa Maria Novella, Peau d'Espagne. Now this scent is probably, for me, at the pinnacle of leathers. And I mean that in a sense of, it really exemplifies that rich, birch-infused kind of bitter leather. And I mean, what else would you expect from the world's oldest pharmacy, Santa Maria Novella? It's great, and it's one that will always turn heads, sometimes for the right reasons and sometimes for the wrong reasons. If oversprayed, it can be very, I guess, intrusive, but when used in light measure, it's spectacular, particularly in the summertime. If you've ever smelled the old Pear's glycerin soap from the 80s or 90s that had this wonderful kind of aromatic but sort of bitter tang to it, this one is the fragrance that reminds me the most of that. Unfortunately, they changed the formula of that soap over the years, I think in the 90s or early 2000s, and it's never quite been the same again. Peau d'Espagne has great notes. There's neroli, there's bergamot, there's carnation for a bit of spiciness. It has violet leaf, cedar, hawthorn, and all of that steeps over a very animalic base with civet and of course birch, which turns that volume right up to 12. It's a great scent, but it's not for the light-hearted. Men and women can wear this, but again, it's all about dosage. It's all about how much you apply and when you wear it. In the spectrum of leathers, I don't think I've experienced one that's quite surpassed Santa Maria Novella's. So check it out if you get the opportunity. It's still in production today. I just want to thank you for dropping by and having a look through this leather spectrum with me. Hopefully you'll find something in there that might have piqued your interest. And I want to hear your favorite leathers. Tell me what they are, be they vintage or modern, in the comments below. I love reading that. And hit the subscribe button and share if you can. You know, I love sort of chatting with people and putting my knowledge out there and gaining new knowledge through you guys. So thank you for joining me. I'll be producing another video very shortly, so I appreciate you stopping by. See you then.